Analytics are great, but don't let them be the foundation on which you play fantasy football. They're best utilized as a peripheral tool only.
Tyler Boyd's dip in production last year better correlates with Andy Dalton being off the field than it does with A.J. Green being off the field, despite public perception.
You can't watch just highlight film because highlight film only shows the good things. Watch the player's actual game tape because you see the good and the bad.
In 7 games in 2018, where all 3 starting Rams receivers were healthy, Brandon Cooks led the trio in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and total PPR points by a considerable margin.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the newest episode of the RotoBros 2020 NFL Draft Scouting Brief Series. It is a beautiful Saturday morning here in the Atlanta, Georgia area, where I have my studio here set up in my humble abode. So I hope you guys enjoy this latest scouting brief. Today's scouting brief is on Donovan Peoples-Jones, the wide receiver out of Michigan, a guy that a lot of people haven't really been, or actually a lot of people weren't at all very familiar with before Combine weekend. Okay, and after his big Combine weekend, a lot of people are a lot more familiar with him now, but they're just familiar with his athleticism and his workout metrics. But how familiar are people with him on tape? That is what my job is, and that is where we're going to start today. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. His size, we always start with the size of these players, 6'2", 212 pounds. So he's got the size, guys. So that's awesome. He's got that prototypical wide receiver size that you like to see out of a guy in the NFL. And real quick, look, throughout the draft process, you are going to find, if you don't do your own scouting, okay, not everybody does. Some people will take, my word as the Holy Grail. Some people will take other people's words as the Holy Grail, and they just don't feel like doing their own homework, which is fine. I always, tell people I think they should, but there's always going to be those that decide not to, and that's perfectly fine. If you trust people, outside sources, that is perfectly fine. And if people trust, my opinion, I'm very, very humble, and I appreciate it more than you know. There are going to be some players through the draft process that you, and if you don't do your own scouting, that me and other scouts will find that you thought that you would like more, and you wind up actually not liking as much. But there's also going to be players that you find who you didn't realize that you would like nearly as much as you end up doing, right? Until you dive deeper into their film and actually, kind of see what they can do. The last scouting brief I did was A.J. Dillon, if you guys remember, okay? A.J. Dillon is a perfect example of the former for me, a guy who I thought that I was going to like a lot more than I winded up liking when I dove deeper into his tape. Donovan Peoples-Jones is an example of the latter. To say I was impressed by what this guy does on the field is definitely an understatement. Watching DPJ gets me amped up. The guy pops off the screen. Okay, and there's going to be some names that I throw around here, and none of these are his absolute comps. Okay, he does have a comp that I think is very similar, and we'll get to that later on. But there are some traits that he shares with a couple players, big time players. The first one is how he pops off the screen and his burst off the line. It really reminds me of Odell Beckham Jr. because this is the first thing when I scouted OBJ several years ago. That was the first thing that I noticed about OBJ. He just popped off the screen for me from the jump, right off the line of scrimmage. It is also the very first thing I noticed about DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I don't say that lightly. Off the line of scrimmage, DPJ, he just gets to it. He gets to it. He's a solid route runner. There's a couple things I think he could clean up here and there. He's not Calvin Ridley or Amari Cooper or, Stephon Diggs. He's not one of these, pristine Allen Robinson, one of these pristine route runners that pretty much has nothing to fix in this area. But he is absolutely, all in all, he is above average right now. And his burst off the line is the first thing, like I said, that I noticed about him. He has clean footwork, very deceptive footwork at the line. And this really allows him to sort of get open at all three levels of the field. And that's really what he is. He's a playmaker, okay, at all three levels. Another thing I like about him, you hear me talk about it in almost every wide receiver brief, is he's a handsy player at the line of scrimmage. I love when I see a wide receiver battle at the line of scrimmage with their hands, right? Especially early on in the stem. I really like when I see, a handsy wide receiver at the line of scrimmage. And he definitely has that, especially when he's in man and press coverage. And that also lends a hand to his ability to get open. But I do want to see him do a better job against press coverage. That to me is probably the biggest thing he needs to improve on his actual overall game, because it's only going to get more difficult at the NFL level, right? But right now he's in a good spot because his speed, his burst, his footwork, his hands, and his route running are going to keep him afloat while he hones that part of his craft. So it's not like he's a guy that needs to learn how to create separation and press coverage, to create better separation and press coverage, while also fixing all of these other little things. He's got all these other little things down. These fundamental aspects of being a wide receiver, he is fantastic at them. And we're going to get to him here in a second. So that's really the biggest thing to me that he needs to clean up. But again, it's not, to me, it's not, it's not really a red flag. It's more of like a preference for me, a personal preference, a nitpick, if you will. So it's not something that I'm going to dock him for or anything. The guy makes some of the most insane catches you will see in this entire class. And I'm not kidding, guys. I'm not kidding. Look no further than the 108 mark against Indiana. Okay. This touchdown catch is phenomenal. In the red zone, he's able to create a little bit of separation, get himself open, runs a pretty solid route. And he's able to make just an absolutely phenomenal touchdown catch. I was sitting downstairs in my recliner, and I was watching this on my laptop. And I'm watching this game. We get to the 108 mark, and this literally made me smile. And I was like, yes, now this is what I love. This is the type of thing that I love. These types of catches, especially in with contested catches, which he's very, very good at. He's constantly making the acrobatic, tough catches, and he really bailed out Shea Patterson numerous times at Michigan. Okay, with Shea's inaccuracy, DPJ made a ton of he made a ton of Shea's bad throws not really look so bad. Okay, because DPJ's ability to adjust, to track the football, and to really catch it cleanly. So. He was really bad. Shea Patterson should thank his lucky stars for a guy like DPJ, because his film would look even worse than it is. For guys scouting quarterbacks, Shea's film would look even worse than it already is if it wasn't for having a talent like DPJ out there at wide receiver. We talked about his body control. His body control is fantastic. And he easily has some of the best body control in this class that I've scouted so far. And it's really up there with the body control of CeeDee Lamb. Like, that's the main thing with CeeDee Lamb. Like, there's a lot of people, that want to talk about CeeDee Lamb route running, and, he made an acrobatic catch, and here, he made this sideline acrobatic catch in a drill at the combine, and that was fantastic. My biggest thing that I love about CeeDee Lamb is his body control. That's one of my favorite things about DPJ as well. And they absolutely line up together. So he definitely has body control that is on the same level as CeeDee Lamb, and that is no joke. And look, DPJ's obviously very athletic. Okay, we've seen what he did at the combine. He's got a great physical profile. We'll mention that also here in just a bit. So the body control is there, and body control. It's the first thing that I noticed when I scouted DeAndre Hopkins years ago. Hardly anybody was putting DeAndre Hopkins as their number one wide receiver in that class. I did. Hopkins was my number one wide receiver. And personally, look, I'm a Tech fan, and I'll make no bones about it. I can't stand Clemson. I'm not a Clemson fan. But when I do these things and when I try to analyze the game and analyze players, I'm not going to hold a bias against people. It doesn't do anybody. There's no point in me being in this industry, okay, and trying to help people if I'm just going to hold biases against teams. Okay. So while personally I may not be a big fan of Clemson, I'm not going to let anybody that plays for Clemson or, anybody that goes, I'm not going to allow that bias to sort of, or I'm not going to allow that to become a bias. So when Hopkins came out, he was my number one wide receiver, but his elite body control was part of that. And DPJ definitely does not lack in that area. So, I'm not shy about telling you guys, Donovan Peoples-Jones has the body control up there with CeeDee Lamb in this class. And it reminds me a lot of the body control that DeAndre Hopkins had coming out as well to make those tough catches. He plays with a ton of physicality and aggression. Obviously, like we mentioned, he's got good size, 6'2", 212, so he's got a nice frame. But he's a physical blocker. He's aggressive in the blocking game, and he's very, very avid. He's not like an elite blocker, obviously, but he does a very, very good job. You'll see him excel in that area. I think he's only going to get better when he works with his wide receivers coaches. So I think that's a good thing for DPJ, going into the league. But he plays with a ton of physicality, a ton of aggression. The kid is just simply, he is a football player. Okay, he just gets stuff done at all three levels of the field in multiple facets. He's an all-purpose threat that can really kill you in many ways, and even on returns, because he's a return specialist as well. So he's got that talent in his back pocket as well. So his special teams ability is going to be something, that helps him be active and on the field on game days. And if you'll remember, this is the exact thing I said about Philip Lindsay when he came out. And we see how well he's done thus far. Philip Lindsay got his shot because of how great he was on special teams, how reliable he was on special teams. Okay, for guys that don't get drafted in the first, second, and sometimes even third round, okay, special teams is a part of your game that can help you make a team, especially if you're an undrafted free agent like Lindsay was. Okay, now I don't think DPJ is going to be an undrafted free agent. I don't think it's going to be close. He's going to get drafted. I think toward the end of he's going to be a day 2 guy. I think he's going to get drafted in round 3 or at toward the end of round 2, I believe. And I think that's definitely fair, especially with what he's put on film and what he did at the combine, as far as his whole physical profile is concerned. But that's the exact same thing I said about Philip Lindsay. And people don't want to, this is obviously a fantasy show. It's geared more toward fantasy. So, you're not going to really talk about special teams a ton or blocking and stuff like that. But those are the fundamentals. I tell you guys all the time, those are the fundamentals, okay, of these lesser known players that really get them to become more well known. Okay, that's how they make their name for themselves and make the football team. And DPJ has that ability. So special teams is going to be a big thing for him. He has fantastic ball skills. Okay. I mentioned earlier his ability to track the football and bring it in cleanly. He's got very, very solid, reliable hands, big hands. I think he's even got bigger hands than DeAndre Hopkins does. You couple this with that elite body control that I've been drooling over, and you've got a guy that can make some special plays happen. Okay. There's just no doubt about it. He can make some special plays happen. After the catch, he's got some really good ability, to gain some yards after the catch. I like his yak ability there. I would like to see him do a bit more, of a better job, cleanly avoiding defenders. But again, like I mentioned, that's sort of a personal nitpick preference, and not much of a red flag, not so much of a red flag. So hopefully he can, get better in that area, but it's not something that, you need to dock him on. He's still good after the catch, but hopefully he becomes, one of those guys that's, even better after the catch, like a Golden Tate has been his entire career. Real quick, let's talk about something here. Let's talk about his sideline awareness. Okay, now that's not really something that many people really think about and talk about when they scout a wide receiver. But it's something that I look for constantly. Okay, and it's something that I see over and over again with DPJ. The guy just knows when and where to get his feet down. And it is Hopkins-esque. I mean, I hate to invoke the name a second time, but it is Hopkins-esque. The guy is always aware of where his feet need to be when he catches the football in the end zone, on the sideline, toward the out of bounds mark. Like that is he I don't know what it is, but he has an innate ability and awareness for this part of his game. That's how good he is at it. So not only is he going to catch some of those off-target throws, and not only is he going to make those acrobatic catches and those contested catches, but he's also going to stay in bounds, and he is a very polished toe tapper at this point in his football career. Okay? And it's funny because if you go back and watch some of his tape on him, and you can see it even on his highlight film, not just normal tape, you can see it when he makes some of these great catches on the sideline in the end zone, he is constantly trying to get both feet down. He's not just, you can tell he's not satisfied with just 1 foot, which is the rule in college. That's all you got to have in college is 1 foot in. In the NFL, obviously you got to have 2. He's always trying to get 2 feet in. And that's something that I don't even know if he even knows he does it. But if it is subconscious, that's even more impressive to me. So he is always aware of where he is, where his feet need to be when he has the football in his hands, when he's making one of those crazy contested catches, and he's always trying to get 2 feet in. And I really like that about him. He is probably top 3 in this class when it comes to winning contested catches. And that matters. That matters. And that is something that will make quarterbacks trust you greatly, because when they know that they can throw the football up and throw it in your direction and you will do whatever it takes to go up and get it, and they trust you to do it because you win so often at it, that is going to build quarterback trust. And he's so good at it because of the body control, because of the athleticism, because of his ups, because of how aware of where his feet are. Okay, so this is and because of his speed and his separation and his route, he's got these fundamental things down. This is not a guy that we are talking about here that has a lot of things to work on. I cannot stress that enough. So his quarterback, wherever he goes, his quarterback's going to trust him in contested catches. You can also put him on any place of the line of scrimmage, and he will succeed. He has plenty of experience in the slot as well, so that's another plus. So it's not like he's not just some sort of one-trick pony wide receiver. He's not a guy that can only play one wide receiver position on the field. He doesn't. He has a nice route tree, nice developed route tree. He doesn't have a whole lot of that to work on. So he's got that down. That's one worry out the window. He's able to get vertical with that great speed. 4.48 40 at the combine officially. He actually ran a 4.5 40 on his first unofficial attempt, unofficially on his first attempt, and then came back and ran a 4.4 on his second attempt. Okay, and that evened out to be an official 4.48 40. So he creates a lot of great angles in his routes, and those help him get open as well. You can see that on the Ohio State film, and that's probably some of his best film, to be honest with you. Against Ohio State, which is impressive. It's not just like, okay, against Indiana, okay, or, Northwestern is his best film, okay? It's an elite defense with elite football players, NFL-ready football players. You've got the best pass rusher in the draft, arguably. You've got the best corner in the draft, arguably. And some of his best film came against Ohio State. So keep that in mind. It's not a guy that just produces against low-level talent. This is something, though, that I think we need to talk about. College Dominator is a metric that you will hear my partner Mark talk about a lot with a lot of different players. It is a metric that is very, it's important in its own way. And I think it's more important for, guys like Mark as opposed to guys like me, because as you guys know, Mark and I kind of see the game in two different spectrums. So College Dominator is an important metric that I think is that you need to look at, but I don't think you need to let it overwhelm you. But College Dominator, I think, is going to fail Donovan Peoples-Jones. Okay, If you look at his college dominator and that is why you don't think he's going to succeed, you are going to fail scouting Donovan Peoples-Jones. He has a 25% college dominator rating. I think the college dominator rating, I think anything over, was it 45%, I think, is considered pretty good for wide receivers. And he's only got a 25% college dominator rating. And what that is essentially, and you'll hear on the podcast, Mark and I talk about player profiler all the time and things like that. And it's a great website. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. But what it does is it's a percentage of a wide receiver's total team receiving yards, receiving touchdowns in college. Okay. So Jerry Jeudy's got a good college dominator. CeeDee Lamb's got a good college dominator, obviously. DPJ does not. 25% college dominator rating. You'll hear Mark talk about this metric a lot. And there is a history, and there's a reason. I mean, there's a reason. There's a history of wide receivers that are highly athletic, have lower than desired college dominators, and lower than desired college production. But in my opinion, DPJ is going to be one of those guys that will break that mold, like two guys from the 2019 draft class that are already doing that in DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin. Hell, Olabisi Johnson for the Vikings is another guy that's been impressive at times as well, when he gets his opportunities. Okay, and he fits the same mold in many ways. An athletic player, didn't have a high college dominator, didn't have a ton of college production or the type of college production that you would hope to see out of a guy coming into the league. But this brings me into the elephant in the room for Donovan Peoples-Jones, his production. DPJ, he's a former top wide receiver in his recruiting class. Kind of before we jump into that, I'll give you a little bit of background. He's a former top wide receiver in his recruiting class, was the number one wide receiver in the nation. He became an all-conference, all-purpose threat for Michigan in 2018 in his sophomore year. That was after earning freshman All-American accolades as a 9-game starter as a freshman in 2017. This year, his junior year, he struggled with an injury early, missed a few games, but he eventually started 9 of 11 games, I believe, where he finished, his stat line finished at 34 receptions, 438 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I know, doesn't sound great, does it? But again, that brings me to the elephant in the room, the production. And this is going to be the first thing and really the only thing that people are going to be able to point to fans of DPJ like myself and maybe like some of you and tell you this is why he won't succeed. But I'm going to arm you with the ammunition to fire back at that. Because this is the type of thing, this is where the flaw in college dominator metrics. There are flaws in metrics all the time. And that's why I don't make them my Bible. This is one of the flaws in a metric like college dominator. DPJ, you can look no further than his quarterback play in Shea Patterson. And this isn't an excuse for low production. It's a reason for low production, for lower than desired production. And excuses and reasons they're not the same thing. They're two different things. Okay? They're two different things. If I'm late to work, okay, if I'm 40 minutes late to work because I overslept, and I go into work and I say, yeah, I was behind I got behind a train, I got stuck at a railroad track, and for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I got stuck behind a school bus for the next 5 to 10 minutes. So that's why I'm late. Okay. While the actual excuses are more fabrication than truth. There's some truth in there because you overslept, but there's more fabrication because you don't want to use that, the actual reason, as your excuse, right? You don't want to tell people the actual reason you were late. So that's why it becomes an excuse. But if I'm late, 40 minutes late to work because my car broke down on the interstate, that's a reason. Because it's truthful. There's more truth than fabrication involved. Okay? So this isn't using Shea Patterson's terrible quarterback play or hit or miss quarterback play, I should say, is more of a reason and not an excuse for low production. And that goes for all the receiving threats at Michigan. Okay? Shea Patterson is the single biggest reason there wasn't more production for Donovan Peoples-Jones, and really even more the receivers, I guess. How bad was Shea Patterson? Well, he's going to go undrafted at the most important position on the NFL football field after playing in a traditional pro-style offense. So that alone, in and of itself, should tell you something. He was convinced to come to Michigan from Ole Miss, okay, to get Michigan out of this sort of neutral state that they've been in for so long, okay, especially under Jim Harbaugh, and he couldn't do it. And Jim Harbaugh's a little bit to blame for that. This is the same guy that turned around Alex Smith's career, opened up Colin Kaepernick's career, but he couldn't do it with Shea Patterson. And Shea Patterson just could never will Michigan to a win over a clearly better football team. He just couldn't do it. Good quarterbacks do that. In the fourth quarter against Alabama in the Citrus Bowl, he overthrew his receivers 7 times in one quarter. In the most important quarter, when you are trailing. I mean, the guy he's just not a good quarterback. He was at the Senior Bowl. And I was standing there at the fence in the end zone with my buddy Jake. And when I believe it was Justin Herbert was in first because they scored the first touch. But when the team with the next quarterback came in, Shea Patterson was that next quarterback that came in. And I told Jake, I said, watch, he's going to throw 1 or 2 interceptions in his limited time, in his couple drives that he plays. Ironically enough, his first throw came on a touchdown, of course, go figure, to a wide open Darius Anderson. Okay. TCU running back Darius Anderson, he was wide open, okay, for a touchdown. So it wasn't a hard throw to make. But his second throw of the game was an interception, and he overthrew his receiver. And that wasn't the only interception he had in the Senior Bowl. Okay, so it was literally predicted. And Matt Miller, who's another respected NFL draft scout, he tweeted the following, quote, "I try to find a silver lining about every player, but I have nothing today." This is during Senior Bowl week in Mobile. But I have nothing today for Shea Patterson. He struggled with accuracy and had no zip to power through. He had no zip to power through wind when throwing into it. It was very windy there in Mobile. I don't think he's draftable. That's exactly what he said. And he's not going to get drafted. He is arguably the worst quarterback in this entire class. Okay, so that is the main reason. Now, look, DPJ is not perfect. No player in this draft is perfect, especially offensively, but everybody's got their things to work on. So are there some situations where DPJ could have put himself in and done some things and tweaked a little bit where he could have helped his production a little bit? Sure. But you're only going to go so far for the most part, especially in college, as your quarterback allows you to do. And Shea Patterson did not allow him to do much. DPJ was bailing out Shea Patterson more than Shea Patterson was bailing out DPJ. It's clear as day on the film for anybody to see. Okay? So that's the main reason why the production for DPJ wasn't where you would think it would be for a guy who was the number 1 wide receiver recruit in high school going into college. Okay, imagine if he had gone to a pass-happy offense, a Texas Tech or Oklahoma. Good Lord, imagine if he had been playing beside CeeDee Lamb the entire time. Right? But this is a guy that I think is going to break the mold, and I think he's going to be a Terry McLaurin, sort of DK Metcalf, maybe like Ole BC John, the best production for them is yet to come. Okay? The best production for them is yet to come. And this is a guy that has so much or so little to fix when it comes to the intangibles. Hands, body control, athleticism, contested catch winning percentage. The guy, route running, the guy has the intangibles down to a T. Okay? He's a guy that I believe will fall into a great situation, hopefully with a solid, competent quarterback and a solid offensive system. The Colts, the Chiefs, the Eagles, those would be Doug Peterson, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, and Frank Reich. Those guys right there would be able to lift DPJ's ceiling into the sky. Okay, and you'll notice that there aren't really any real red flags aside from production that people are going to mention. There's not. Nobody's going to be able to look and debate with you about DPJ and say, well, I wish he would have had better hands. I wish his route running was better. I wish he had better speed. I wish he won more one-on-one situations. I wish he was better in the red zone. You can't say that. All they're going to look at is production. But now that I've explained why you shouldn't be as terrified about his lower than desired production, you can feel more confident to move through the offseason knowing that this is a guy that you need to own and you need to draft in fantasy. Okay. I would look to draft him in the, between the third and the fourth round of the draft. That's likely where he's going to go in your rookie drafts. Most rookie drafts are 4 to 6 rounds for the most part. So the third to fourth round, I think, is a sweet spot wherever he ends up. But I think there are some landing spots. The Chiefs, the Colts, the Eagles, where the end of the second round, if you really want to lock him into a great if he lands in a great system with a great offensive mind and a great quarterback like those three. Well, I shouldn't say great quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, but you know what I mean. Offensive system, Frank Reich, Colts. You got that. That is a sexy situation to be in, regardless. No great number 2 receiver across from T.Y. Hilton. The opportunity would be there. But I think the second round is a place where you can say, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to lock him up. I don't know if he's going to fall to me at the end of the third or in the fourth round. So he's in this very attractive place. I'm going to go ahead and lock in my pick for him now. I wouldn't blame you. And I would probably do the same thing if he lands in one of those 3 spots. Okay. So guys, this is Donovan Peoples-Jones, to say the least. You can tell I am in love with. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's going to be awesome. And I think that this is a guy that is really going to, I'm not saying he's going to be an alpha receiver, a number 1 wide receiver in the league, but could he be the type of number 1 wide receiver that a T.Y. Hilton is? Absolutely. Could he be the type of rock solid, productive wide receiver that Terry McLaurin is? Yes. I don't think Terry McLaurin is an alpha receiver. He could prove me wrong. I don't think he's an alpha receiver, but could he be that type of guy that is that can, lead the team in catches or lead the team in yards or touchdowns and, be an all-around threat? Yes, he can be. He can be. And I think Terry McLaurin is a very, very good comparison for him from an athletic standpoint, a production standpoint. And Terry McLaurin, from a production standpoint, didn't produce a ton either. He didn't have great production at Ohio State, and he had Dwayne Haskins throwing him the football. Haskins isn't a good quarterback anymore at the NFL level, but he was damn good in college. So who would you rather have throwing you the football in college, Dwayne Haskins or Shea Patterson? Imagine if Donovan Peoples-Jones had a guy like Dwayne Haskins in college in that offensive system. Holy hell. But anyway, I think this is a guy that is a very talented football player. He is more than solid. He is going to be rising up my wide receiver rankings. Guys, I just think that this is a guy you need to latch onto. You need to put him in your sights, and you need to get him. So Donovan Peoples-Jones, huge player for me. Absolutely love the guy. So hopefully you guys kind of learned a little bit more about Donovan Peoples-Jones. I know this scouting brief was a bit longer than normal, but there was a lot to pack in here, and there was a lot of, I think, sort of myth busting to do. So hopefully open that up for you guys and kind of gave you a little bit more of an insight into DPJ. So guys, great wide receiver, tons of talent, just needs a shot. And I think he's going to get drafted a lot higher now because of his athletic testing, his athletic profile, what he did at the combine. And I think teams are going to see what he can do on tape. And they're also going to see, okay, what was his quarterback production like? Oh, that was his quarterback. Okay, I can understand that a little bit more. And they're not going to dock him on draft day as much. I see him as a day 2 pick, late second, definitely no later than the third round. So, guys, I hope you liked the scouting brief on DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I love him. I think you should too. Let me know if you have any questions. You can hit me up on Twitter at RotoBros Chris. You can also find me at FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis on Facebook, the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. Guys, thank you so much. I love each and every one of you guys for continuing to hang out with us, even after the combine. Listen to the scouting profiles. We're going to be doing it through April. So buckle up, because we still got a whole month, over a month to do these scouting briefs and get you guys ready for the draft and your rookie drafts as well. So guys, I love you. Thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun doing this one. I love Donovan Peoples-Jones. Again, I think you should too. Definitely check him out. Listen, enjoy the weekend. Continue to I hope you continue to enjoy these episodes, guys. And as always, Keep balling, baby.